Howdy, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Sanctified Podcast. While researching St. Dismas, I stumbled across an interesting person. And then I remembered that a little while back, someone actually mentioned that I should check out the Roman soldier who stabbed Jesus, which just so happened to be the same person. So without further ado, let's get into Saint Longinus. As is an all too common theme for saints, there is really not a whole lot known about Saint Longinus' early life. In fact, we don't even know his real name. He was given the name Longinus around the 4th century, likely related to the Greek word for lance, longa, and it was first used in the Gospel of Nicodemus. Before that, he was just called like the soldier that stabbed Jesus. He had no official name. What we do know leading up to Longinus' time in the spotlight, if you will, is that he was a loyal Roman soldier and he had some sort of medical issues with his eyes, whether he was blind in an eye or just had some sort of vision challenge. It's not very explicit, just exactly what, is just that he had some sort of issue. Being loyal Roman centurions, Longinus and another soldier were given the assignment to break the legs of the men being crucified, Jesus, Justus, and Dismas. But when they got to Jesus, they found that he was already dead. Even with that, the two soldiers upheld their duty and made sure that all three of the men were dead, were killed. So Longinus thrust a spear or a lance into the side of Jesus. And that's kind of when he realized that something was different about Jesus. After he stabbed Jesus, both water and blood trickled down the spear. Longinus was pretty confused at first because, when you stab somebody, you don't really expect to see any water coming out. Blood, yes. Water, no. But then this mixture flowed over Longinus' hand on the spear, and immediately his vision problems were gone. He was totally healed of any afflictions he had. As his literal eye regained sight, his spiritual eye opened up as well, and he immediately declared that truly this was the Son of God. Now, a quick little side note, if you were confused by the blood and water mixture, don't worry, you're not alone. I had to look it up too because I didn't see the symbolism right away, but the mixture represented the blood of the new covenant and the water represented the waters of baptism. And it's also representative of the birth of church from the side of Christ, just as Eve was created from the side of Adam. And for those that don't know, Eve was created by a rib removed from Adam, if you read the Bible. Back to Longinus, though. So Longinus then became a follower of Christ, and he was baptized shortly after his experience. Longinus left where he was and journeyed out to preach the word of the Lord in an effort to save others the same way that he was saved himself. He was very successful in his endeavor because of his close connection with Christ and his particularly unique experience. I mean, it's not every day somebody's going to run into the person that literally stabbed Jesus. So Longinus returned to his homeland of Cappadocia, and there he lived a pretty happy life for a little bit, at least. After hearing of Longinus' success in converting people to the Christian faith, though, soldiers were sent to capture and execute Longinus. Soldiers arrived in Cappadocia in search of Longinus, and Longinus, being the newly converted and devoted man that he was, he invited them into his home without hesitation, and he gave them food and drink, not having any idea that they were there to capture and kill him. The soldiers didn't recognize him, though, which is kind of weird to me, but they didn't. And they talked and they enjoyed each other's company for a while until Longinus asked why they were in Cappadocia. They told him why they were there. They were told him that they were there to capture and execute Longinus. And without any hesitation at all, he told them immediately, "I'm Longinus, here I am, take me away." But at first, the soldiers didn't want to take him. He had been so kind and welcoming and generous to them that they were just kind of like, "No, we're gonna turn a blind eye. You go away, get safe. We'll pretend this never happened." But Longinus insisted. He had been a soldier himself, and he was ready to die for his faith and to also help them fulfill their duties. The soldiers took Longinus to the ruler of the land, and upon arrival, Longinus was told to pray to the pagan gods or be executed, and you can probably guess what happened. Longinus was like, no way, not gonna happen. But this next part gets a little brutal, so listener discretion is advised. So the ruler wanted to teach Longinus a lesson, if you will. He ordered his soldiers to remove Longinus' teeth and to cut off his tongue, just as a punishment before his execution. They wanted him to suffer. So the soldiers obeyed because they had to. They pulled out his teeth and cut off his tongue. But guess what? Longinus was still able to clearly communicate and preach about the power and grace of the Lord in an attempt to convert others still. He had nothing to fear, and he knew it because if he died in service to the Lord, he was going to be okay in wherever he went after he died. This angered the ruler even more because Longinus was becoming living proof of everything the ruler wanted to deny. And so immediately he ordered his soldiers to decapitate Longinus. Now, in doing so, blood from Longinus miraculously landed on the ruler's face, and suddenly he could see clearly. He had no idea previously that the icons of the pagan spirits that he had in his home were in fact homes themselves to evil spirits. And these evil spirits were blinding him from anything they didn't want that ruler to see. Gaining this new sight, the ruler cast out the evil icons and the evil spirits, but it was far too late for Longinus. Longinus was martyred, but in this, the ruler who despised him so much learned how wrong he was in his actions. He converted himself, and he never looked back to the faith that he had followed so closely before. And that sounds kind of similar, doesn't it? Like how Longinus killed Jesus, but then was converted, realized the error in his ways, and now the ruler killed Longinus and he's converted. So it's kind of a unfortunate chain of events, really. Longinus' story doesn't end there, though. There's another story that Longinus' head was cast onto a trash pile so that he wouldn't be able to receive a proper burial. And it kind of seemed as though it would just stay there forever. But then something interesting happened. A blind woman prayed for her sight to be restored after she had exhausted all medical experts and their efforts. However, shortly after praying, her son became gravely ill. This son died just within a few days, and the woman was terribly distraught. In her sleep, Longinus appeared to her. He told her that she would see again and that she would see her son in heaven. Obviously confused on how this could even happen, she asked, How? How can this happen? Longinus told her that outside of the city was a pile of trash, and within that pile of trash was a head. He instructed her to find the head, and then her sight would be restored, and she would see her son in heaven. Now, I know this sounds pretty crazy to think about just some random person going digging through a trash pile for a severed head. But if you kind of think about it, like this woman has been through tremendous amounts of stress and just pain and suffering, not being able to see, losing her son in right after her efforts in trying to regain her sight. So probably if I were in her shoes, I'd be willing to try just about anything as well. The next morning, she asked for help to get to this garbage heap. Upon arrival, she began feeling through it in search of the head. And just as she was getting ready to give up, she touched something strange. She looked down and saw the head. Like, she saw the head. She could see. Tears were rushing down her face, and she took the head and brought it home where she cleaned it off. Yeah, that last part sounded a little bit creepy to me, but I don't know. You're overcome with emotions. I guess it kind of makes sense, but it's a little odd. That night, her dreams were once again filled with a bright light. Longinus appeared, but this time the woman's son was with him. Longinus told her, "Behold, the son for whom you grieve. See what glory and honor are his now, and be consoled. God has numbered him with those in his heavenly kingdom." Longinus then told her to bury his head with her son's body when her son's funeral was held. And upon waking in the morning, she was overfilled with joy, So at her son's funeral, she buried Longinus' head with her son's body, and in a way, Longinus received the burial that he had previously been denied. Now, I do want to reiterate that I only found that story mentioned a couple of times in my research on Longinus, so take it with a grain of salt. It's more likely just a story than a true account, but I wanted to include it here because it was very interesting nonetheless. Perhaps it is true. Maybe evidence will come up to prove that it happened or to support that it's very likely that it happened. But for now, it's kind of a iffy sort of deal. So I'll leave the decision on if you want to believe it or not up to you, obviously. What is left of Longinus' spear that stabbed Jesus is held in St. Peter's Basilica today. And for a time, it was held within a balustrade with a depiction of Longinus and columns on either side. Now it is kept in the chapel above the statue of Saint Veronica and is displayed on the 5th Sunday of Lent for everybody to come and witness. And actually, from the release of this episode, that 5th Sunday is coming up in just a couple short weeks. Now, interestingly, Longinus' feast day has changed in the past, and depending on your denomination, it could be different as well. Prior to 1969, Longinus' feast day was March 15th. But that was changed for the Roman and Eastern Orthodox Catholic churches to October 16th. And on October 22nd and November 14th for the Armenian Apostolic and Coptic Orthodox churches, respectively. He is the patron saint of soldiers, which makes sense, and of eye disorders, which also makes sense. His name is also invoked in the rite of exorcism when it is deemed necessary. And oh boy, exorcism, right? Maybe someday I'll get into a special episode about that, but I want to dive down that rabbit hole now because that's some pretty intense stuff, honestly. And thank you to Daniel for bringing up St. Longinus. Took me a little while to get to him, but better late than never, right? I hope you all enjoyed today's episode, learned something interesting about St. Longinus. What do you think about his story of having his head restore the sight of a blind woman? Do you think it was true? Do you think it was just a story? If you want to support the channel, you can leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you have a saint that you want me to check out, feel free to email me at sanctifiedpodcast@proton.me. And as always, I encourage discussion with those around you about Longinus, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.